From Mountain Home to Raft River, we've got all the District 4 analysis you'll need to know. This is the Magic Valley Prepcast with Scott Burton.
That's right. It's another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. Brandon Baney joined by Scott Burton, holding up his favorite Los Angeles Rams flag. It's a little transparent. I can kind of see through it, but I can't.
Just like my game, Brandon. Just like my game.
See through and easy to detect. That's for sure.
You're not kidding.
Yeah, well, it's been a busy week in the Magic Valley. We're going to tackle basketball, wrestling. But before we get to that, Scott, these fall sports just don't seem to want to go away. We've still got football news coming.
We don't. I mean, I don't know about you, but, man, it doesn't matter what age group it is, whether it's high school, college, pro. I hate saying goodbye to football. You know, there's just something about it. And so we're going to hold on to it just a little bit more. And it's something that we've hinted at doing over the past several weeks, or at least during football season. And we finally got it put together, and I'll let you lead the way.
Okay. Well, I'd like to bring on, for the first time in the history of the show, our first guest, and what a guest he is, Cameron Andersen, the head football coach from Gooding High School. Coach Andersen, how are you?
I'm doing good. I mean, nothing is worth the introduction that you just gave me, but I'll take it and run.
Well, first guest in the history of the podcast besides Scott and I. So, we set the bar low for you. You don't have to do much to clear it.
Listen, you bring the age, Scott brings the beauty. I'll bring some football knowledge.
Perfect. It's a winning combination.
For sure. Well, we wanted to bring on Coach Andersen really all season because really it's been a unique season for Gooding in terms of Colston Loveland, right? The 4-star tight end, University of Michigan recruit. And for the first time in a long time, we had a really highly heralded prospect that brought its own attention each week. And so we wanted to pick your brain on what it was like to navigate this season with all of that going on. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. When Scott asked me about it a little while ago, I was really excited. You guys are on when I get my 6 miles in the morning. You guys are in my earpiece and on a weekly basis. So I really enjoyed the show and so look forward to it myself.
Awesome. Hey, I've got a question for you, Coach. At what point, as Colston was coming up and playing football, did you know you had something special?
Well, I think that there's different categories of special. I've been really blessed and Gooding to coach a lot of really good players. When you have really good players and really good assistant coaches, you as a head coach can look like you are respectable. And I think that's the story of me and Gooding. And, I think that there's different levels. When I saw him in the 5th grade, it's kind of funny. Him, Curtis, Atkinson, a lot of our skill guys were too heavy to run the ball in little kids football. So they were the offensive line. And I watched them play, and just the coach in that group just kind of put the quarterback under center and he quarterback sneak about every play, and they would just wedge down the field. And then the minute we could start throwing Colston the ball about in the 6th or 7th grade, he never dropped it. Like, he just had a knack on offense and defense of being where the ball needed to be. His older brother was a really special player, but he had a different frame than Caden. And then we went and played a JV game. He played 2 JV games his freshman year, and in that JV game, he looked different than everybody else. And he still was only like 5'11", 6 foot, 160 pounds, but he just had a different ability and a knack. And I thought, boy, this kid's going to be really good. And then coming into his sophomore year, when he was about 6'4", 190, and Utah called and offered, I thought, boy, that's a Pac-12 school that's pretty good. We probably have something that's really, really good. And then the next level is when whenever Alabama calls and you're talking to those guys and they're offering a player of yours, it's kind of shocking. And that's when you know, like, well, we didn't even know what level this kid could be. So there's all different areas of special, but that's kind of the path where we kind of knew okay, this guy's going to be, top 50 player in the nation. Good.
When you're fielding these calls, did you take a call from Nick Saban, the man himself, or was it one of his underlings?
Mr. Saban, I didn't get to talk to him personally. I got to talk to pretty much everybody else that offered Colston as far as head coaches go. I talked to Bill O'Brien, his OC, and it's kind of funny. Bill O'Brien Jay Graham, he used to be with Jimbo Fisher at Florida State, and he went to Alabama. He got hired as the tight ends coach. He was the first to contact us. He was the one to actually offer Colston. And then like 2 days after he offered Colston, he resigned. He had some family issues. And I'm like, well, that was short-lived. That was a short night. The guy who offered, and it's kind of funny. This is the funny part of the recruiting process. I started looking through my phone, and I had the number of Sal Sunseri. Now, if you don't know who Sal Sunseri is, he is one of their defensive coaches. His son played for Saban, and I just thought, well, maybe this is still a cell phone number. I call it. He answers. I'm like, hey, this is Cameron Andersen from Gooding, Idaho. And he's like, how did you get my number? I'm like, don't worry about that. But, Colston Loveland is my tight end. You guys just offered. And he goes, well, I know exactly who he is. And I'll have a guy call you back. They call me back and said, yeah, the offer's still good. About 4 days later, Bill O'Brien calls and he's like, hey, me and Coach Saban were just watching Gooding film. And when he said that out loud, I said this to him. Wait, you were watching Gooding film? And he's like, yeah, we were just watching Colston. And I'm like, man, I wish I would have called a better play. Whatever it was, I wish it was better if Nick Saban was just watching the film. So Bill O'Brien was a cool guy to talk to. And, he really liked Colston, thought he fit what he did. But that was a fun conversation. But I never got to talk to Mr. Saban.
Going through this process is something that not every small school gets to experience, and Brandon and I talked about this on a couple of earlier podcasts. It seems to me that one of the toughest things to do, or at least something that you have to pay attention to as a head coach that's got a quality team that's making a run in the playoffs, how do you keep everybody focused? Because all the attention is surrounding one individual.
Yeah. I would say that the answer to that is based on who that individual is, because he's going to control that narrative more than anybody, especially inside the locker room. I have seen high profile recruits in the Magic Valley or in Idaho, and things did not go well with the team, and they kind of exploded, and it's really hard on the coach. I just got to say, like, Colston was just an absolute pleasure to coach and one of the best teammates that I've ever coached in 17 years as a head coach ever. He's just, you wouldn't understand it unless you were around him. It's one of the reasons why these guys want him so bad. The first time you get to talk to him on that scope, I've never had a player that could hold his teammates accountable to the level that he does and them still like him. It's really hard to look at your buddy and say, you need to go harder, you need to go faster, you need to get to a different level. He has a way to do it, and the guys still respect him. And a lot of it had to do with who those seniors were, and they knew how good Colston was, but he never was that guy. He had every right to be the biggest jerk I've ever coached and could have justified it. And he just wasn't. And so I would say that it's less to do with anything other than who that player is. And we hit the jackpot as far as obviously having a great player, but it's the kid and the leader that people don't get to see that makes it manageable as a coach.
You there, Brandon?
Go ahead, Scott. I was waiting for you. I don't want to step on your toes.
I don't want to jump in on your deal here. Looking at the path that you guys have taken and being a small school, and Gooding is really known for producing some top quality football players. I mean, you've had some people go on to the next level. whether it's, Idaho State or whether now it's Michigan or, or wherever. But now you've got the biggest thing that's ever happened in Gooding, as far as football is concerned, happening. How do you use that as a springboard moving forward for these younger kids who have watched Colston, grown up with him, and now they are seeing, oh my gosh, these are the teams that I watch on Saturday. These are the teams that are going to be playing for a national title. How do you springboard that into the future?
Yeah, Scott, I think that's a really, really elite question, man. I think that it's a two-edged sword. I think that one, there has to be some understanding in what Colston is. If you haven't seen him recently, so the other day when Jay and Jim Harbaugh both came to Gooding, so they were both in Gooding. They stayed at Colston's house. Like literally, we're like, yeah, we'll stay in the car if we have to. He's a really cool dude, but stayed that night. They had breakfast with his grandparents in the morning. And Coach Harbaugh was like, hey, let's go over to the school and let's lift some weights. I need to get a lift in. And so they did. They jumped in the car. They showed up to school, met me there. I was able to tell Colston in front of Coach Harbaugh that he got Gatorade Player of the Year. That was a really, really cool moment. And then Coach Harbaugh was itching. He's like, let's go get a workout in. And he literally lifted. I mean, he's doing squats with Colston, sets and that sort of thing. But in that conversation, he's saying out loud, like, hey, Jay Harbaugh is going to be the tight ends coach. It's Jim's son. He's standing there just looking at Colston. And if you haven't seen Colston recently, he's put on like 10 pounds and an inch since the end of football season. Right now he's about 6'6", 250. So Jay is looking at him and I'm like, how does he compare to like Eric All? So Eric All is their starting tight end, had great game in the Big Ten championship game. He's going to be one of their big players in the Georgia game, game plan wise. He's like, Coach, it doesn't compare. He says Eric All is 6'3", 240 pounds. Colston is physically way bigger than him right now, and he's watching Colston lift weights. And so going back to the question, there has to be some understanding that you have to look like that to get Big Ten noticing you. Colston is not a normal looking human being. When you get to see him in person, he is a giant, massive man. And so for one, if you're 5'10", 170 pounds and a really good football player and your dream is Michigan, there has to be some understanding that that's probably not going to happen. And there has to be some honesty from me and some understanding on both ends that I'm not telling you can't have your dream. I'm just telling you your dream is probably different. So one, you have to really portray and be honest with your kids about what Colston was and the opportunities and how they lined up for him. It was all kind of worked out the right way. Two, you have to really sell the fact of the worker that Colston was. And that's what you can sell to your younger kids in your program. Hey, listen, this kid had a dream to play in the NFL. He had a dream to go play big time college football. That was his dream since he was a freshman in high school. Is when his brother committed to Carroll, he says, I'm going to go bigger. I remember the conversation. I remember him looking at me like, I'm not going to Carroll. I'm not playing football if it's Carroll. I'm going to Pac-12. I'm going Big Ten. I'm going SEC. And you just look at the kid and you're like, okay. But he has 2 weight classes every day. And he pushed his academics far enough that he could graduate early and attend Michigan and go there January 3rd. He sacrificed relationships, fun things that kids get to do in high school. He took high offerings. He did all of these things in sacrifice. And there has to be an element of sacrifice to achieve greatness, especially if you want it at a high level. That's what you can sell to kids. Hey, look, if you're willing to, it's not for everybody, and I'm not going to make anybody do it. But if it's something that you want, I have a model now that you can point to. It takes commitment, effort, sacrifice, and kindness. And if you do those things, it's proven that you can be from a small place and get those things done, as long as you check the boxes physically as well. But everyone's dream is different, and everyone's level and greatness is achieved at different abilities. But he has shown that, and that's how I can sell it to kids coming up in the future.
Okay. I want to transition to Coach Harbaugh and his brother Jay, because, when all these big time coaches and recruiters come knocking, as a parent and as a coach, because you are essentially a parent by default of these players, and Colston's parents, you've got to get a feel that your son is going to be taken care of. And the read that you get on these coaches and recruiters that come knocking has got to be a positive one, because we all know that there are not those people that rub you the right way and make you comfortable with releasing your son or daughter into their care for the next 4 years. How did the Harbaughs come across in that sense in relationship to you after spending time with them and to Colston's parents?
Yeah, it's another really good question. When people ask me to describe this process, I'm not going to be that guy. Every head coach is going to hate this podcast if I were to say stuff and like it was a terrible process. Yeah, it had to suck talking to Jim Harbaugh and Herm Edwards and Chip Kelly, and like that had to be just terrible for you. But the way I describe it is, it was really, really cool and absolutely terrible. And one of the elements that made it hard was the element you're describing. You build these relationships with these guys. And I felt like it was my role to be a football advocate for Colston when it came to information to him. So my feelings about anybody recruiting him or stuff that I saw, I would never tell him unless he eliminated them and he would ask me very specifically. But I felt it was my role not to influence his decision at all, because I was not getting on the plane with him and going. And so there were some guys that were really hard to watch recruit Colston. The Harbaughs, the minute I had a conversation with both Jay and Jim, I knew that would be Colston's best fit. And I didn't tell him that, but just the way that they talked is the way that people talk that are around Colston. The way that they communicate their high expectations, their realness, their easygoing, like the way that they communicate fits the way that Colston's been communicated to his whole life. Michigan, climate-wise, is very similar to what we have here. The university, when you walk into a stadium, I mean, he FaceTimes me, or records for me walking into a stadium with 116,000 people, which is, Gooding has 3,000 in the town, so it's almost the same capacity. But walking in that stadium, that was the cool moment for him. But Coach Harbaugh, his mom and his dad right away were like, "Oh man, this guy's a guy," and he would I would send him a text after a game, say, "Hey, Colston did this," and it would be like 11 o'clock here, so it's like 1 a.m. there. He would reply back and have a conversation. Like he's a normal guy. He's walking around the school with us and chatting it up with kids and elementary school kids. He's sitting down across from you and is just really real. And both Harbaughs are an excellent fit for the person Colston is. It wouldn't be a fit for everybody, but for him, it always felt right.
Okay. Brandon.
Well, I just wanted to say I really appreciate you go to bat for your players. You are an advocate for your players. Unlike a lot of coaches, it doesn't matter if it's Michigan or a Carroll College. You're going to fight for those two players equally to make sure they get the opportunity to play at the next level. How tiring is that? Because you've got a roster full of seniors that all want to move on and play, and you have to balance all of that.
Yeah, that's also a really good question. I think we'll have 3 or 4 more sign out of this class. There's some really, really good kids, guys like Curtis Atkinson, who played a position that he probably isn't going to play at college. Dakota Sage on the defensive line, Tate Gillette, linebacker, and maybe Taylor Cavett as well. But it's one of the things that I'm really proud of since I got to Gooding in 2009 and 2011 or 2010 2011. Alec Basterchia, he signed with Carroll College, and that was the first kid out of Gooding to sign with Carroll College in a while. And since that time, since 2011, we've had 27 kids signed to colleges to play football. And that to me is really, really cool. It's a lot of work. I would say that some of those guys were so deserving, and I would say the other guys just had a dream, and I fought like tooth and nail just to get them something. And some of them made it 4 years, and some of them made it 1 year. And some, I think it fluctuates, that sort of thing, but it's a lot of work. I would say the number one thing is building relationships. I put on that free showcase camp every single year in Gooding, where I bring in the NAIA colleges. I have great sponsors like Donnelly Sports and David George at Adrenaline Fundraising, who give us some money that I can pay those coaches to come and be here. And then the kids get to come for free. And I built relationships with them over so many years. Those head coaches, they trust my recommendation. And it's not just Gooding kids. I would say over the last 3 or 4 years, especially, I would say that there's 10 kids in the Magic Valley who have signed with colleges based on my recommendation to those coaches. I just had a really good conversation about a really good tight end from Jerome to a coach that he doesn't even know I'm advocating for him, but I'm like, hey, if you want to know who he played, who's a dude, go get that dude. I think that the biggest thing is just being honest with evaluators. You can't send a kid and have him fail and then get another kid there. So you have to be super honest with what they're getting, with what they should anticipate they're going to see, how they're coached, what their academics are like, what their troubles are, what their home lives are. Like, you have to be really honest with those. And since we've been really honest and things have panned out like I had predicted to the coaches they might, they know that they can come back and get some information from me, whether it's mine or another kid, and that they're going to get at least what they came for. And that's taken years to build. And I'm really thankful that I'm still in an opportunity where I can use those relationships to help kids out.
Did those relationships help with the pandemic and the way recruiting was affected because coaches couldn't fly out to see a kid play? A lot of times it was by word of mouth, right? How was recruiting different with the pandemic for the past year and a half, 2 years?
Oh, completely different. Colston got most of his offers sight unseen, just off of film. And the crazy stuff I had to do, I legitimately had to take Colston, tape a measuring tape to the wall, and video record me measuring his height, video record him stepping on a scale, because there's a lot of people that will just be dishonest and fudge it. I had to show the whole length of the tape that he wasn't in shoes, measuring his taking pictures next to things that people knew how big they were, getting them to the communication piece got stronger because kids had to talk to people, but the evaluation piece was completely different. So I did one showcase camp where we couldn't have basically any coaches there, and people don't realize the work that took, hours and hours. I actually videoed every single rep and every single session from that, and then cut it up myself and sent it to college coaches. And again, that probably helped one Gooding kid. It probably caused another 25. I don't want to throw out a crazy number, 25 to 30 kids create relationships, and another 10 to 15 actually get an offer out of it. But that act to college coaches demonstrates to them that I can be reliable and trustworthy in the one kid from Gooding that I might be able to get signed. And I think that the pandemic, it caused a lot of things, but it also taught us a lot of things about how important the relationship building piece is to all this.
Scott, you got anything for Coach Andersen?
No, I don't, man. I just want to thank you for visiting with me every week when we had our phone conversations and getting ready for this, and taking the time today to do it. I know you're off to your daughter's basketball game, so we won't keep you any longer, but thank you for kind of shedding some light on something that, a lot of people around here just don't have a clue how it works because they've never experienced it before. So it was a lot of fun, and it was a great ride. And hopefully some kid in the Magic Valley gets a similar ride in the future. Yeah,
and I think they will. I think that there's some kids coming up, and I've tried my best to communicate that. When Auburn and Arizona or Arizona State were at our Kimberly game, and I'm pointing at the Gatlin Bear kid saying, that's the next kid. Doesn't matter that he doesn't play for Gooding. That's a kid, get eyeballs on him type of thing. But let me just say to you guys, like Brandon's got to know more about sports in Idaho than anybody with all these podcasts that he does and and the stuff that he does. And just know, to you and to Scott, like we, as a guy who represents a lot of coaches, just know that we're really, really thankful for the eye that you put on our sports and the state of Idaho and most importantly, these kids, because it's gone a long time without stuff like this. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. And I know that Paul knows how I feel about this, but it was really, Idaho sports has done so much for this state and for Idaho high school kids. And really have been beat around by a lot of big entities like the state. Can I say that on here? But anyway, like all those things have happened for us. You guys have always been an advocate for us in high school sports in Idaho, and we can't have enough of them. So a big thank you as a representative of coaches for that.
Yeah.
It's a great partnership. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
And don't take any crap from Paul. All right, you understand? like you just know, like Paul, he gets a little moody sometimes, and there's no reason that we need to be putting up with that.
Yeah, he knows how to. He can't pull that crap with Brandon and I.
Yeah. Well, good, because he stops by those Gooding football games. He gets a little feisty, and
he still talks about that picture he tweeted where he had to take a phone call.
Yeah, he's talking to me, and Jim Harbaugh calls, and I let it ring a couple times, and I show him the phone. He's like, "Oh yeah, you better take that." And then I go on blast, like listen, Paul, I know you're like the king and all that, but like I had to make sure I took that phone call. You don't ghost Jim Harbaugh. That's one of those rules in college football, in high school football or coaching circles. Don't ghost Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, no, that was fun, and the timing was perfect because Paul and I were calling that game that week, and you walked away with the phone, and he got the selfie of you behind it. Oh, classic! And
I think you just got a name for your podcast today. Don't
Jim
Harbaugh.
I just wrote it down.
All right, guys, I appreciate you.
Yep.
All righty, thanks, Cameron. Appreciate it.
Yep. See ya. Wow, what fun that was, huh?
Yeah, we've been trying to do that ever since this whole ride started, and finally got it narrowed down. And as the season went on, we just kind of figured, let's let the season finish, and then we can kind of tackle this with a clear head. The ride is pretty much over, that was a lot of fun. Great insight, to a process that most people just don't know how it works, and that was fun. That was a good interview.
And I think it ties in really nicely with what else we're going to talk about today, because the lead story from the winter sports scene in the Magic Valley was Amari Whiting at Burley last week, setting a new school record, 44 points in a game that Burley won 97 to, I think it was 12 against Wood River. But in terms of athletes on the big scale, Amari Whiting is like the next one in the Magic Valley. She's already committed to Oregon, which was a top 10 program at the start of the season, only a junior. And so I think it's good to kind of educate ourselves on this process, because we're seeing it unfold yet again, this time at Burley.
Yeah. And it's really exciting to see these athletes be showcased and get the attention of these bigger schools. And it's, and in Colston's case and in Amari's case, I mean, they're not going out there making it all about them. They're just so talented. They stand out and they're getting people's attention. And so in Amari's situation, the old record stood since 1996, and it was at 42 points. And the weird thing about this is, she finished with 44. But when I was talking to, head coach Amari Whiting about it, they really didn't have that on the radar. They were just a game where Burley was cruising, and they finished the third quarter, and she got a text from her JV coach, and from her freshman coach actually texted the JV coach because Wood River didn't have a freshman team, so the freshman coach was gone, whatever. And so kind of told the coach, hey, you know what? Amari's got 42 points, and she's got the school record. She's tied the school record, This was at the end of the third quarter. So they put her back in for 30 seconds so she could get those points, and she got them, and the rest is history. And it was kind of a cool thing, because in our conversation, I was saying, okay, well, so how does that feel to have that little nugget on your resume type of thing as she heads to Oregon? And her mom said that, she was more excited that she beat the family scoring record, kind of over me. And this is over Amber or Jace and her dad. And if you know the Whitings, they're all just all world basketball. The first thing that Amari did after the game was she texted her brother, who's on his mission in Finland, and just to let him know that she beat his record of 41 points. So I think there's a little competitiveness in the family, but it was kind of cool because they kind of kept it on the inner circle just a little bit as far as that goes. What an accomplishment.
And now, if we look at Burley as a whole, the big picture, I think it's clearly established that they are the team to beat in the Great Basin. I'm not sure anybody will come close to touching them. They've already defeated Preston. Preston is a really good team. Preston just lost to Blackfoot by 3. To me, that's kind of the last hurdle for Burley, because Burley's proven. They beat Middleton at state last year. They've beaten all of these other titans in girls 4A basketball.
They really have, and you look up and down their schedule. They're sitting at 9-0. Mountain Home is 7-3. And those two are really kind of pulling away from the rest of the pack. Twin Falls is hanging in there a little bit. But, when you look at Burley's schedule, they're headed to, a Boise tournament, the Timberline tournament. And, who knows what's going to happen there and who they're going to play. But as far as the rest of it goes, they're going to travel to Mountain Home on January 11th, and that is always a tough place to play. And, they're going to be playing, Mountain Home's going to be playing for something. And then they do have Preston again, January 25th. So there's a couple of little things on the radar, but as long as they stay healthy, they are cruising right now. That's a really good basketball team. And again, Amari is the one that kind of, she's the straw that stirs the drink. So they got to really make sure that they keep her healthy and not kind of expend her too much by too many minutes and too many quarters.
Right. That's going to be such a key for Burley as they look towards the bigger picture. The other big girls basketball story that we wanted to talk about on the Prepcast this week actually happened last night. We're recording this Wednesday, and Tuesday night we had a battle at the 1A D1 level of the top two teams from District 4. You had Murtaugh taking on Raft River. Both teams were very impressive. Raft River came into the matchup undefeated. Murtaugh won 61-40. I think they sent a pretty big statement to the rest of the league. They led 30-17 at halftime, win by 21 points. Addie Stoker had 19 points for Murtaugh on the win. Addison Stanger had 10 as well. And so you had Raft River, a team that thought they were ready, and Murtaugh says, not so fast.
No, boy, I don't think anybody saw the margin of victory being what it was, especially on the road to Raft River. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Raft River says, okay, fine, we are ready to hang with you, Murtaugh. Well, Murtaugh had other ideas because Raft River was coming in to that game undefeated, and Grace had beaten Murtaugh first game of the season. So you just go by records, which a lot of people that don't understand the teams will do. Said, how in the heck did an undefeated Raft River team get blitzed by 20? Against Murtaugh? Well, Murtaugh's a pretty dang good basketball team, and you haven't heard the word or the last of Raft River either. They're good too, but I think they got a little wake up call.
I think this will be good for the Trojans. They've got a first-year coach, Bart Dieter, and I think this will be good for them to kind of refocus and, okay, we took our first one.
Well, and the thing is, when you have a team that's undefeated, whether it's I don't want to say legitimate undefeated, if you play a bunch of patsies, you're going to beef up your record. Not saying that's what Raft River does, but what I'm saying is anytime you get a team that's undefeated, sometimes they need to be knocked in the mouth and put on their butt to get them to focus again, because you can ride that wave and kind of get a false sense of security and think you're all that. And I'm not saying Raft River did that, but I agree with you. This loss for them might refocus them just a little bit.
Yeah, it happened in Middleton last year in girls basketball. They were undefeated, went to state, and Burley popped them right away at state. So it's always interesting. Last girls basketball note, Jerome is hosting the Jerry Callen Memorial Tournament this weekend. Is that a Friday, Saturday?
Yeah, it is. We're going to have like a 16 round robin tournament, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It starts at 5:30 on Friday night, where we're going to have Madison playing Mountain Home and Twin Falls playing Filer. And we're going to start right away with a little bit of storyline with the Twin Falls and Filer game, because head coach Mike Amaya from Twin Falls, as you know, the old Filer coach. So, hey, let's have him play his old team right out of the gate. Since I control the schedule, then that's how we're going to do it. So those two are going to play at 5:30, and then we're going to have Jerome and Emmett play at 7:30. And Saturday we'll pick it up at 10:30 again, and we'll have our final game at 4:00 in the afternoon. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, the teams that we have coming in, we have Mountain Home, we've got Madison, we've got Twin Falls, Filer, Jerome, and Emmett. So we kind of have a variety of teams from around the state, from the east, from the west, from the middle. So it should be some fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. And I don't know the backstory at all of Jerry Callen or who he was. Do you?
Oh, I had no idea.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
You go in there.
Yeah, the Callens are a huge name here in Jerome, and they've been here forever. Jerry Callen is one of the good old boys that grew up here, played here. His grandkids played here. I coached them, and not Jerry, but his grandkids. And it's just a Jerome family. I mean, you know how you get these towns that have names, and you hear a name and it's associated with a town. Well, Callen is one of those that is associated with Jerome. They have just been such huge supporters of this tournament, and their daughter is going to help hand out medals, Dennis and Sandra caps. So I mean, this name has got, it just traces back, and it traces back into other names that are associated with Jerome. So I can't even do it justice describing the name Callen to the Jerome community. But Jerry was a huge supporter. Jerome guy. Obviously he's not with us anymore, and so this tournament was created on his behalf.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love to see those community pillars being recognized year in, year out. In boys basketball, there's a couple of intriguing games coming up on the schedule. Let's start with Jerome. The Jerome boys are going to be traveling to Preston for the Preston Indians Classic, which starts Thursday. And we will have every single game from the varsity side on IdahoSports.com. Myself and Paul Kingsbury actually are going to be on the call for all. So we got Paul all nice and wound up, and then I have to spend 3 days with him inside the Preston gym.
Gosh. It's like, what kind of bet did you lose? Seriously. And if you can see my office right now, I know I have this somewhere.
That's all right. You can,
so this tournament in Preston is going to be a lot of fun, because they've got some really good teams there and some interesting teams as well. And it starts with Nampa and Jerome on Thursday, and Cuna and Shelley. And it's set up just like the state tournament. And you look at these teams, Nampa is probably the one that is the black sheep. They're wild. They are up and down the floor, wild, no discipline, shoot the ball, whatever, and they try to suck you into that. And so they're going to bring that element, which is always good to have in a tournament, because you never know when you're going to see that, and when you go to these things, you want to see things that are different. Nampa brings that, okay, and they get Jerome right away. Cuna and Shelley, we talk about, those guys, solid programs, both of them. Columbia and Bonneville, and then South Fremont's playing Preston. Now, South Fremont, I think Fremont is coming in for one game, because I think Sandpoint originally was supposed to be there. They bailed out. And so they're going to play, South Fremont's going to play one game, and then I think Bear Lake's going to take over from there. And obviously, when you look at the lineup, Preston has got to be the favorite, in this tournament to win it.
I think we're anticipating, in the way Preston set up the bracket, I think we're all anticipating Jerome and Preston in the championship game, which those are two teams that figure to be at state. They were both at state last year, and I think that's kind of the idea. So I certainly think that's the way it's going to go, is Jerome and Preston, and I think that's going to be a good matchup and a good kind of barometer to see where Jerome right. They've already had a good measuring stick with Bishop Kelly, which is one of the favorites in District 3. Preston is one of the favorites in District 5. So for Jerome, I think this will be a good measuring stick.
Oh, it definitely will. I mean, if you want to, be the best, you got to beat the best. You got to play the best, and you've got to put, your schedule to a test in certain areas. And this tournament for our boys here at Jerome, is going to be great. Yeah, they got tested by Bishop Kelly. They got beat by Bishop Kelly. Preston beat Bishop Kelly, and you look at. I found my sheet, by the way, because I did have some information on some of these teams. Preston is, golly, they're solid. They're solid guard play. I think they're the favorites to win it. Jones, the coach's kid, obviously is a huge part of that, as well as the 80s kid, Nab. So you got the 80s kid, you got the coach's kid, two vital cogs on this Preston team. And they do what they've always done. They're just going to run those 1-2-2, three-quarter court, 1-2-2 half-court press. You don't get any surprises with Preston. They're just so efficient. And meanwhile, then you get CUNA, who's playing these 5A teams to start, and so you look at their record and you're like, well, how good are they? Well, they're playing 5A teams, and they're playing some good ones too, and so that is a great draw for this tournament. They've got a 6'5" kid named Gordon, who is inside out their best player. And this CUNA team is pretty athletic. They run that make-miss defense. They make the bucket, they fall back into 2-3. They miss, they go man. And so there's something different that you have to get used to that you don't see all the time. And again, you hear me say, you go to these tournaments, you want something different. And CUNA brings that. You get Shelley, who's another good team. They've got a solid post player, 6'5" kid named Vance. And he is really, really good. They've got another solid player, a guard named Lott. He's a perimeter player, shooter, slasher. And that's a team that likes to get up and down. And so you've got a team that's got a solid paint presence and a solid point guard and a shooter, and so, something else there to look at. And you can go up and down all these teams. Bonneville is, they're off to a rough start trying to find that first win. But, they lost a lot of seniors and they have no experience at all. And so now you get the young team and let's see what they can do. As far as Columbia goes, they were predicted to finish 6 out of 8 in their conference. And they lost 7 seniors as well. So, they still bring back Jack Keller, who's a pretty solid ball player. But, you've got a couple of rebuilders playing each other in this tournament. But then you've got the slasher, you've got the post player, you've got the wild team that's up and down all over the place. So, and then you've got Steady Eddie Preston, who just does what they do. And for our boys, Jerome going in, that's going to be really good. For us and anybody there. I'm really excited for this tournament and for you guys to call it. You should have some pretty good games.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And there's actually, so there's the 8-team bracket, and then there's like an appendage at the end of the bracket as well. Because Bear Lake isn't playing in the 8-team bracket on the first day. Filer is going over to this tournament as well, and they're just kind of getting 3 standalone games. They're going to play Bear Lake on Thursday. It's actually the first game at 1:20. And that's Bear Lake is a team that got to state last year. Then they played the Preston JV on Friday, and that's going to be a good test because of the defensive system they run. And then Saturday they play Skyview High School from Utah. Now this team is no walk in the park. This is a perennial power in the state of Utah. They have multiple Division I players that have gone through the program the last couple of years. So Filer's going to get a really good test over there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to make them better. Preston is just one of those locations to where they've got access to those Utah schools. And, we talked about this, I think, last week. When you go to the East in basketball, up and down that east side of Idaho, you are finding quality basketball. Preston's no exception. And when you have access to those Utah schools to come in, man, you get some really, really good teams. And again, different teams you don't get to see.
Yep. So Jerome and Filer fans can tune in and watch their teams play all 3 days at the Preston Indians Classic on IdahoSports.com. Just check the game streams tab each day on the homepage at IdahoSports.com to find out when your team will be playing. We obviously can't tell you beyond the first day because it all depends on if they win or lose. So,
right, for sure.
Let's wrap up with wrestling. The Tim Matthews wrestling invite was held last week, and that's a big signature wrestling event for the Magic Valley.
Oh, it's huge. We had 17 teams come down, including a ranked 5A team, and we had some really good wrestlers. And the tournament went so smoothly. We had our signature honoree Tim Matthews in attendance the entire time. He helped me hand out all the medals at the end. And Tim Matthews is my old football coach as well. So I mean, he and I know each other forever, and he's just one of those guys that really helped put Jerome wrestling on the map and keep it there. And Tim Matthews is one of those guys that's he was a 2-time Big Sky champion. He's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. I mean, this guy is all wrestling, and I think he's 70 something, and he looks like he's 40 something, and he'd still whip you. And he's a guy I don't want to mess with, But we're happy to have the tournament in his honor, and everybody flocks to this thing, and it's really cool. And one of the cool moments was his grandson was able to win his division. So in Declo, Tim Matthews' son is the head coach for Declo wrestling. And so his son, Tim, came over and brought his kid, Derek, who's, I think, in the 182-pound class. And Derek was able to cakewalk through, win the Tim Matthews 182-pound champion. And his granddad was the one that gave him the medal at the end. And so a lot of cool things happening, but a great tournament. Jerome ended up winning the whole thing, going away, and a really good, solid performance by our boys, but a great tournament overall. Yeah,
it's going to be a lot of fun to watch those Magic Valley teams try and break through this year. I know Jerome is loaded, has a really good wrestling squad. It seems like at the larger levels, it's been the teams from the north that have had a lot of success. And then at the smaller levels, it's kind of been over in the western part of the state. And then, of course, Ryrie at the 2A level has had a mini dynasty. So I'm hoping that some Magic Valley teams can break through at state this year in wrestling.
Yeah, I think so. And you've got, at least in the Great Basin, you've got, Jerome and Minico, who are both solid and, barring anything crazy, I mean, have a shot, at a state title, if not getting a team trophy. So there's two good teams here in the Magic Valley that have a legitimate chance.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun to chart their progress as the season goes along. So speaking of along, we've gone a long time today. And
yeah, we were going to talk really about the Valley Wendell game coming up. So why don't we give that 30 seconds to just preview that thing?
Yes, I forgot that on my rundown. That's right. So boys basketball Friday night. You've got Valley traveling to Wendell. These are the two best teams in the league. Valley's 4-2, Wendell's 4-1. Wendell, of course, upset Valley at districts last year to go to state. I got to see Wendell play. This is going to be a fun game Friday night.
Oh, it definitely will. I mean, Wendell got their first win in a very long time over Valley last year. And but they've got to figure out how to replace their 4 seniors, that they lost. They still have some people coming back, but they're not going to be the shooting team that they were last year. They're going to really try to get an inside presence going at Wendell. So it's going to look a little different. But, talking to these coaches, and Coach Kelsey said, if we want to compete this year, we have got to figure out, especially playing Valley, how in the heck are we going to get better in transition defense? because we just gave up way too many points last year to Valley in transition. So that's going to be a focal point. So if you go out and watch this game, understand that Wendell is really paying attention to getting back on defense and stopping that transition game of Valley, because Valley, man, that's a pretty good team that Coach Brian Hardy has over there.
It is. And Wendell is a team that just scraps. They rebound the basketball so well. They've got a team just full of Dennis Rodmans, I feel like, that just are able to sneak their way through and get rebounds, leads to second chance points. Diego Torres is a great point guard for Wendell as well. So, yeah, that's going to be a fun game. And we'll see if the Trojans can keep up that momentum that they earned last year at districts, or will Valley have something to say about that?
No, you're right. Yeah, Torres and Swainston are really going to have to bring it for Wendell, against this Valley team. And really an interesting thing, both of these teams right now are absolutely sucking it up at the foul line. And when I was talking to both of these coaches, they both said the same thing. We suck at free throws right now. We have got to get better from the line. I think Wendell's shooting 52% on the season. Valley's shooting 45% from the season. These are boys varsity basketball teams that can't make a free throw right now. So as close as these two teams are, I don't know. Maybe that's something that'll decide it in the end. So it's going to be a fun game on Friday.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So Wendell hosting Valley Friday night, 7:30. And we'll recap that game and so much more on next week's edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast. Scott, as always, thanks for pinning down Coach Andersen finally from Gooding. That was a lot of fun.
That was a great time, and it was something in the making that we talked about. We knew we had to get this story out there, but why get it from me when we just get it from the source himself?
That's right. So for Scott Burton, I'm Brandon Baney. Enjoy the competitions this weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here next week for another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.